Hey everybody, I'm Ziv. Welcome to this episode on planning approvals, specifically for owner builders. It's actually part of a playlist, I'll link it in the description, about the whole process of getting a set of drawings made up and submitting them for approval. I owner built my house and I did all the designs myself. I was a carpenter before then, so I had a little bit of knowledge on the building process, but very little on design and planning applications and all of that. So this will hopefully help some people who are planning to do everything themselves. So if you don't know, my channel is all about life hacks, and I reckon one of the biggest life hacks is building your own house. You can save a lot of money doing it yourself, and I hope this helps some people out with the whole process of the planning stages when you own a building. So what is planning approval? Like it or not, wherever you design a house, you're part of a community, and the planners, the council, the shire, the city, whoever it is, they look at your design and see if it fits in, and see if it fits in with the scope of what the community wants to achieve. So let's say you're in a really heritage listed area and people have spent their investment, their money to move to that area because they like the aesthetic, they like the feel of it, and suddenly you decide to develop and you knock down an ancient house and you put in this sleek modern house, and it's just not consistent with the keeping of the character, and the community, for obvious reasons, would get very upset, right? So the council or the shire or whatever area you're in, they sort of look at your design and go, is it in keeping with our requirements? Let's say they have specific, stormwater requirements because of the water systems there, and further downstream they want to avoid flooding, so they're going to look at how your development impacts the stormwater and the creek system. And that affects the wider community as well, because we want to minimize flooding. Or they look at the bushfire risk if you're here in Australia, and they'll go, well, we don't want all our infrastructure to burn, and we don't want to burn through our property, so we'll make sure that you have enough water on site so that our emergency services can come to site, access the water, and deploy that asset to put out the fire. Or it might be, overshadowing onto the neighbour's property where they don't get any solar access anymore. Access to natural light for humans is important, so we don't want to build huge 5-metre facades right next to somebody else's place. So they look at really the overall picture of what's happening in the community, and there's rules, like them or not. Sometimes they're ridiculous, like certain colours. I remember for my roof, I was not able to have a light coloured roof. I mean, it seems ridiculous, but I was not able to go, in Australia it's called a surf mist. This was at the time, because it was before the new planning code came out, but at the time, I was not able to go a light coloured roof, which for energy efficiency, urban heat island effect, all of that is really important, but I was not able to do that. So some of the rules are a bit ridiculous, I think, but I was allowed to have a black roof, right? So yeah, they may be ridiculous, but you have to obey to them. So this is, about that, how you get through that planning approval process. Now, this video is just about planning consent, and further on down the track, I will elaborate more on the building consent phase, so stay tuned for that video. Now, what does the council or the planning authority want to see as part of that consent? They're typically concerned with things that affect the community, obviously, and those things are typically what the outside of the building looks like. They're not too concerned with the inside. They will want to make sure that you don't have like 7 kitchens for some weird reason, where you've got maybe 7 families living in a house and you're only paying 1 set of rates or something like that. But typically they want to see the heights, the elevations, where the floor levels are in relation to other floor levels, what the overlooking onto other sites will be like if you're building up, all of those sorts of things, where windows are going to be located, what colour the building is, what the house looks like on the outside, and how it's sited on the site. So is it near any easements that they're concerned about? Those easements might have infrastructure that is to, the water utilities or to the electrical utilities. It might be infrastructure to the council. They might have a stormwater easement that runs through the land. So they're going to want to make sure that the building is placed in the right spot, that, you know, it doesn't affect. So usually you want a nice site plan detailing what's on site. You want floor plans, what's going on site. You want elevations with some selections, cladding selections, whatever. That's sort of your minimum. And then you've really got to look at the overlays that affect the area. So you might be in a sort of a landslide overlay, or you might be in a bushfire overlay. Sometimes you need to provide an additional drawing. Like where I am, it's very common that we provide a drawing for the CFS, you know. That's the bushfire people in different states is different. Country Fire Service, that's what CFS means here. You know, what is their access track? Do they have a turning head that's big enough for the truck? Those sorts of things may go in with the planning application. There might be needed to be stormwater design. If you're suddenly adding a huge roofed area, that affects how runoff is dealt with from the site. Sites absorb a bunch of moisture when it rains before it runs off from the site, like literally water flowing off the site into the creek. Whereas if you have a roof, that water flows straight into the tanks. If the tanks are full, it will flow straight into the creek, which could create a big flooding front. So often they want a bit of detention. So you might even need an engineer brought in at that stage to assess, you know, how they're going to deal with stormwater. And sometimes council will only approve the planning application when those calculations have been made, when, you know, a bushfire assessment has been made. So what you could do as a start, if you're needing engineers and stuff to be involved, is get all the related parties and sit down together and have sort of like a pre-application consultation. So firstly, I generally go to council myself and go, look, this is what I'm thinking of building. You know, do you foresee any issues? Or look at the overlays and go, yeah, okay, there's native vegetation involved here. We may need to clear some land or something like that. Let's get a native veg consultant in. What about, you know, your bushfire authority here in South Australia? It's the CFS. We'll get them out, you know, to do their assessment. So you can consult with these people pre-application and sort of go have a round. You could even organise a round table discussion, you know, get everybody in the same meeting and go, let's brainstorm this, Mr. Architect, Mr. whatever it is, get everybody together and have a discussion on what you're planning to do, so that early on in the piece you can figure out what the planners and everybody want to have from you. You may also want to get your energy assessor involved early as well, because if you're designing window sizes and stuff like that, you may have windows needing to be in some positions because of overlooking or whatever, or being on a boundary, or it needs to be frosted. And then your energy assessor can model that and see how well it's going to be performing. So those are the few that I would be getting in on that roundtable discussion. First up is your engineer, your energy assessor, and the council, whether it's roundtable or not, or you see them all individually, just to start discussing and preempting problems that may arise with the planning application. That way you can nut all those little things out nice and early, and the application goes for simply. Other specialists or reports that may be involved, apart from what I've already spoken about, which is bushfire, maybe native veg, stormwater. There are some other ones that I will try list off the top of my head. We've got heritage. Heritage can be an important one if you're in a heritage zone. So you may need to get a heritage consultant out to see if the renovation you're doing, the addition you're doing, conforms to all their heritage criteria. You might need to do wastewater, because say you're not connected to mains, you need to get wastewater engineering done because you're gonna irrigate your wastewater across your land, and you need to get it engineered that there's enough soakage for that wastewater. You might need to get flood mapping done if it hasn't already been done already. So that's another engineer. Native vegetation is an important one as well. They sometimes have an assessor. Sometimes bushfire and native vegetation conflict, because the bushfire people want you to maintain a 50-metre asset protection zone, APZ, And then in that 50 meters, there's some significant trees or something, also some significant flora and fauna, or flora, not fauna, they'll run away, that you might need to protect, and that will become apparent with the native veg, whether that asset protection zone is even doable in the first place. Other ones maybe, that aren't necessarily required, but may be good to think about is, well, what about Indigenous? Do you have an elder come and do a smoking ceremony, a welcome to country, something like that, to see that it's all right to build on their land, right? Or see if there's anything on the land that may be of value to them that you can protect rather than just bulldozing everything. So at this stage, it's not a requirement in Australia, but something to think about anyway. So once you have all the documentation, we are going to want to move into finalising that and then submitting. So you will get all your specialist reports. Somehow you will annotate them into your plans, or you just put in a note, see this report submitted with the application, or you put in your own notes that reflect the notes from the engineers or whoever the specialist consultant was, and you submit. And there'll be a fee typically for submitting. They do have to spend time assessing your application anyway, and usually they're like a fixed fee. They have, they'll look at how much the development costs, and they'll ask you a little questionnaire, is it 2-story, 3-story, and the fee, typically they have a fee schedule and will charge you accordingly. It's not like they just charge you whatever. So the fees are fairly expected, and you submit, and now it can take a while. Often they give you a rough time frame for when they can complete their assessment. Sometimes in the first week or so, they'll send back and just go, we can't even assess what the fee is because we don't have this and this information. They'll do like a preliminary request for information. And then you have to supply that, whatever it is. Your application goes on pause typically whenever they do a request for information. So let's say at the start, they give you 2 months time frame before they return or approve your plans. And then they do a request for information and it all stops there basically. And then when you furnish them with that information, then the ticker starts again. Then once they've assessed it, they can done the preliminary assessment, they'll charge you the fee and it will go in, and that's when the time starts ticking. It can be 1 month, 2 months, depending on what state you're in and their workload and what rules they have to conform to. In SA now, they've actually got like a time limit of, I believe it's like 2 months max to assess your application. I've had applications that have run over time as well. So don't take that as gospel because they can still run over time. Sometimes your application has to go to public notification to inform that community what you're doing. Like if you're excavating out the whole side of a hill to sit your house in, that may be visible from like kilometers away, miles away. And it may affect more people than just your neighbours. So they may take it out to public notification, which could even involve running ads in newspapers. It usually has a period of time for responses to be gathered. And then you may have to address that public notification with amendments to plans. It can go to court, all these sorts of things, if you really want to do that particular thing. For my particular house, I had to go to public notification for the earthworks because in their overlays it said I wasn't allowed to do earthworks more than 1 metre, but all my earthworks were sort of at the back of the block. It only went to public notification to my specific neighbours, and everybody either no comment, or I think one person said yep, all good, in a nice little email back to council. But yeah, I didn't have to change my plans at all. It was just another thing that held up the application. And yeah, it sits there with them. And then typically you get some RFIs. I've had 1 or 2 that have not had a single RFI, and an RFI is a request for information. But you will have 1 or 2 RFIs at the end where they go, we want this and this information. And this is the great thing for an owner builder. These RFIs are like gold, right? You do not have to submit a perfect application. Through this format of these requests for informations, you will see what mistakes you've made. They will go, sorry, you didn't, you haven't allowed for overlooking. We want you to put in that, window sill height is to 1500 above floor level, 1800 above floor level, or you frost the glass to that level. They will come back with a fairly particular request for information, and then you can adjust your plans and resubmit those plans that address that request for information. So I wouldn't stretch it too far. I'd still get as best an application in as you can from the start, which will, speed up the application process anyway, because it will be easier for them to assess. There's more information there for them. But also, it doesn't have to be a perfect application, because they will do those RFIs. And yes, it will draw the time out, the time frame. Maybe they'll even reset the ticker, reset the clock, and it will drag out more. That's why it's important to have as much information as you can at the start. But if you're doing it all yourself, you can just take a breath and relax, because you don't have to get everything perfect. You don't have to know everything. They will check it, and they will ask you for any information that is missing. And then all those unknowns that you didn't know, an unknown, you will know, right? And then you can address them. So you don't have to be as nervous as I was when I submitted my planning application for my house. I was super nervous, but it isn't that bad. They will help you through the process, whether they like it or not. At the end of the day, they want development, right? Because they get bit higher rates the more developed the property is. If they have a blank piece of land, they will have rates of whatever the land value is. And if they have land with a house, they have those rates plus. And land with a house has bin expenses and everything. The rates go up significantly. So it is in their interest to have developed property in their zone. So they will help you out through the process. So yeah, I think once it's done, once you've got the planning approval, you can breathe a little sigh of relief. The building rules consent, in my opinion, is a bit easier. It's a bit more fathomable about what the expectation is, because you're going to the building code. Engineer will supply most of those things, unless you're an engineer yourself, but then you're already talking the language, so you'll be able to figure out what's required. And then it's a lot of detailed drawings, which may be trickier for some than others, but they may ask, how is the wet area being waterproofed at building rules consent? Something like that. And you have to draw exactly how the details are going to be, or reference the relevant standard, right? So maybe you could just get away with referencing the relevant standard in the private certified stamp set. But anyway, I'll go over this in a couple of videos time for submitting actual building rules consent. So stay tuned. It is part of the playlist. Like I said, if you found this information useful, do us a favor and like the video. It'll keep me motivated to make more. And yeah, subscribe to the channel and you'll see more videos being added to this playlist. Cheers guys. I'll see you on the next one. Have a good one.